Hey everybody, CT Hippo here. I know it's been kind of a while since I've done one of these, but I've been working for a living and that puts a dent in, doing anything useful. So today, it's time to actually start rebuilding some stuff. You can see here I've ground out and, cut out and ground out the bad fiberglass that was in here. I've also cut the bulkhead. This is going to go here, like so. And then the finished cockpit ring sits like this. And this cross member goes on the front of the bulkhead and supports the cockpit ring. So the whole thing goes together about like that. So that's where we're going to end up, hopefully. Plan for today is to go ahead and start coating this. So I'm going to mix up some fiberglass or some resin, and I'm going to just paint on here on all the spots where I ground out bad fiberglass. And once that goes off, and that should only be half an hour at the most, it's fairly warm in here, then I'll come back through and put another layer down with cloth, with the fiberglass cloth, and then once that's done, I can start putting the bulkhead in. So, let's find a good place for this thing. And have at it. So, first thing we're going to do is measure and mix the epoxy. Always a good idea to wear gloves for this. This stuff's not bad. Some of the, okay, it does say right there on it, caution, skin irritant. This stuff's not as bad as some. There are some really nasty epoxies out there. This is Silvertip System 3, I think this stuff is. Yeah, I think this is System 3. There's also West System, which oddly enough is sold in most West Marine stores. That's like a 3-to-1 mix, and so this is a 2-to-1, just makes life a little easier when it comes to the mixing. On the whole, I think they're, I don't know, I guess I can't really, I've never used the West system, so I can't really say. When I built the Raptor originally, I started using this stuff, and I've just kind of stuck with it ever since. So there's a part A and a part B. You mix 2 parts part A to 1 part part B in these little mixing cups. So I'm going to mix up about 3 ounces total. So part A, read the note. We go 2 ounces of part A. 1, let it settle, 1.5, right there. Okay, battery died on me there, that's always helpful. I really need to mark which ones of these are bad. And of course I'm trying to do that right in the middle of mixing epoxy. One thing at a time. I do however need to get some more gloves. Alright, so we've got our 2 ounces of part A. Now we're going to mix in 1 ounce of part B. To make a total of 3 ounces. That. And then take a generic popsicle stick and stir the shit out of this stuff. 3 ounces may not seem like a whole lot, but when your working time is like 15 minutes, it's actually, I may have mixed up too much here. So something you want to always do, first off, something you want to always do is make sure you're scraping the sides as you mix it. Otherwise, it tends to not mix totally and not go off completely. Bubbles. Generally, you prefer to not introduce more air than absolutely necessary in when you're mixing. It does happen. As you can see, there's some bubbles rising, but you want to minimize that. So, with that mixed up, that out of the way. For this, I'm going to use a spreader. These guys, just little plastic scraper things. They're cheap, and this is basically just a viscous liquid. And so I'm just going to spread it around like that and apply some essentially wherever I have bare wood. This coat is just to soak into the wood. Move this guy over here. It's just to soak into the wood and seal it. Yeah, something like that. And then when I come through with the next coat, that will have the glass on it, the actual mat. Like that. And really, I'm just trying to find any place that's got bare wood and make it not bare anymore. See how I'm scooping up excess from this area on the scraper to move it to where I need it, up here. So despite being just, little random bits of plastic, these are actually really handy little tools. The other thing I'm going to do, I've got my bulkhead here, and it's going to get coated with resin. I'm going to use a disposable paintbrush to get the edges, because that's where water's going to get in and it's going to rot. You see any of this? Okay. So, using a disposable paintbrush to do the edges to make sure they get done. And then I'll use the spreader there to get the surface. And then whatever I have left after that is going to go on the cockpit ring. You want to make sure you're doing this someplace where drips don't matter. Because once this stuff goes off, I'm not going to say it's permanent. I mean, you've seen me grind it out, but it's a pain. Okay. So there's that. I'm going to set the brush right there for the moment. This This plywood that I got has like one good side that's coated with something and one rough side. I'm going to make sure I get the resin on the rough side, let it soak in. This will get a coat of fiberglass eventually. But again, you want to put down a wet out coat. No, that's probably not the right term. Anyway, you want to get this stuff soaked in resin. Let that go off some. And then come back and do your cloth. So again, I'm scraping it off the one side and applying it to the other. This stuff's messy. Scrape it off there, apply it over here. This is the coated side of the plywood. So if it doesn't get quite as much, it's not the end of the world. I mean, it still needs to be completely covered, but it doesn't need to be, it's not going to soak in as much as it is on the other side, which is more the bare wood. Voila. We'll clean up here. And then I'm going to try to figure out how I'm going to set this to dry, because now it's completely coated in resin. These are things that you should think of through beforehand, but you know, I don't always. I'm just going to set it. Alright. I'm going to set it on the floor on the edge and let it go off. So now, really got to be careful here. My hands are coated in resin. It's going to go off in a minute here. So I need to be careful where I set things down. I set the scraper on a Ziploc bag just because I don't really care if the bag gets scraper stuck to it, it'll come off. Using the brush here to just spread out any drips. I don't have to grind them out later. And I've got about an ounce left. So I'm going to go ahead and use the paintbrush here to apply it to the cockpit ring. Now this is laminated, and there's always going to be little gaps in the lamination, and this bottom side's going to be kind of out of sight, out of mind. So I'm trying to really make sure that I get resin down into those gaps in the lamination. Again, on the underside of the ring. Right now I'm going to do the outside, and then if I have resin left over, I'll come back and do the inside. Big gap there. I'm going to try to work that in with the bristles of the brush. Work the resin down into that gap. Some big delaminations going on here at the very front of the ring, because this is where it makes its sharpest curve. Check and make sure any of this is visible on the camera. Okay, that's good. So right here where it makes its biggest curve, there's some delamination just because it didn't want to bend around that corner. So again, just working resin down into those gaps. Once it goes off, that'll be solid. Won't have to worry about it. I've got the spot here where it laps over itself. That leaves a kind of a discontinuity. So again, make sure I fill that with resin. Stuff is starting to set up on me. Okay, so that's got the outside of it. Now I'm just using up whatever resin I have left on the inside of the ring, which is just a big flat area. I'm trying to work it down into any gaps I find here. With that, I'm out of resin. So I'm going to set the cup over here on the Ziploc bag. The brush is toast. That's a single-use item. I need to make sure that I get the ring hung up here someplace to dry where it's not going to get smeared by anything. So I'm just going to set a piece of wood on the side of the workbench and hang it. Just like that. And then, trick I like to use, so the brush is all covered in nasty. So I'm going to grab it in one hand, try to get a hold of the cuff of my glove here, which is sometimes easier said than done. I'm just going to wrap it completely over the brush. When I'm doing paint, I'll clean the brush and then do this, and it keeps it from drying out. In this case, all I'm doing is having my brain go south on me. Containing the mess, essentially. The brush, because it's on the inside of the glove, it won't stick to the inside of the garbage can, it won't stick to anything else, you won't get resin everywhere, blah, blah, blah. So there's the cockpit ring. You can see I've just got it hanging on a board drawing. And you can see there in the reflection of the light how that's a little bit of a drip there. Oh well. But all this area that was bare wood now has resin on it. Got some spatter back here. Oh well. And then this board, which is going to be my bulkhead, is now coated. And we wait for that to go off. And the next step will be to take this stuff. Usually I get fiberglass cloth, by the yard. But where I went for it, they didn't have it, so I just got a package. This is 46.5 inches by 25 inches. And so what I'm going to do is cut that out to match the shape of where the bare wood is here, and then put another layer of fiberglass, or of resin, and stick it down. Do that for the places where there was bare wood. Once that's down, the bulkhead will go in, and the bar that the cockpit ring sits on, that'll all go in, and then I'll start working on the inside of the cockpit. I'm going to do some work with the seating, try to make that more comfortable, put some padding behind my back, because I sit right up against the back of the cockpit ring. So that's what's coming next. Hopefully we'll be able to do that later this afternoon. Until then, we'll see you later.